We dedicate this episode of Did You Hear to Tutor.com. Your library card is your ticket to live resume help, live homework help, test prep, and more. Visit jocolibrary.org/tutor. So you think you can interview? Marty Johannes and Dave Carson talk career and finance with Janet Barrow from the Society for Human Resource Management of Johnson County. Later, Gregg Windsor recommends the best books that haven't even hit the market yet.
Welcome to the Did You Hear podcast, and we are going to talk about what's happening. And so many of our programs are based around our trimesterly theme, and this trimester we're talking about breaking free. And breaking free can mean so many different things, but it means stepping out of your shell, doing something different, trying to improve yourself and being better in some way. And one way that you can improve your life is to attend some of our programs. And we have some really great programs, and one of those programs is called So You Think You Can Interview. And this is happening at the Monticello Library, Saturday, April 6th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And to tell us all about it, I have some very special guests here, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves to you. To my left is
Marty Johannes. I am the Career and Finance Librarian for the Johnson County Library System.
And to my right?
I'm Janet Barrow. I'm Director of Human Resources with Water One, and I'm also Director of Workforce Readiness with SHRM JC.
Well, welcome to you both, and thank you so much for coming to be part of this podcast and also to shed a little bit more light on this event. I'm just going to go ahead and read the description if that's all right with you. Okay, so it says, your interviewing skills might need some polish no matter what position you seek or how long you have been working. This two-part session begins with an interactive presentation about what to expect in an interview and tips for success. Next, participants can meet one-on-one with a human resources professional for a 20-minute mock interview and feedback session. Come dressed for the interview. Continental breakfast will be served starting at 9:30 a.m. and is presented by the members of the Society for Human Resource Management of Johnson County. And you can find more information about that at jocolibrary.org, and it's also in our paper publication, The Guide. Who came up with this wonderful idea for this program?
Well, it's a program that SHRM JC has offered on their own in the past, sometimes utilizing a library meeting room for this program. But we offer a lot of career-related programs through the library, and many times we get requests on our evaluation forms for more one-on-one interaction in terms of review of resumes or opportunity to practice interviewing skills.
Sure. What a great resource that is to be able to run it by somebody that's more of a professional than just a friend, you know.
Yes, and in this program, attendees get the opportunity not only to hear a presentation presented by human resource professionals, but then to sit down and with a human resource professional and have a one-on-one mock interview for about 20 minutes.
Yeah, and then you get direct feedback.
Yes.
Wow. That's really valuable. So what's your role in all of this?
Well, my role is really just trying to get all the volunteers together. SHRM JC is the local chapter of Society for Human Resources Management, and we all are volunteers, dedicated, and have a passion for human resources. And this is a great opportunity for us to be able to give back, because usually in our typical roles, we're going through the interview process for people that we need to hire for our individual companies, but we really can't give them feedback on things that we might notice or to help them develop or to succeed when they go somewhere else. And so this is a great opportunity for us to be able to kind of work it from the other side.
Does it work? I'm assuming it probably does, but I mean, are there success stories? Have you heard folks that have tried this before? And
This format definitely does work. I haven't done it in Johnson County before, but I have done it in previous locations. And it's just really wonderful to be able to talk one-on-one with the different participants. I've gotten a lot of feedback from them, that things that maybe they didn't think about or weren't aware of. The other sessions that we have done have been very informative for both the participant as well as the volunteer. So yes, it does work.
Well, let me ask you this. So, have either of you ever bombed an interview?
I feel I have.
I definitely have in prior lives.
And so it's a learning experience, but isn't it so much better to have that learning experience through something that's a mock interview where you get that feedback rather than the real, because that hurts. Oh, man. I mean, the effort and energy that's put into getting to just, being able to be interviewed, being one of the finalists. Oh, that's hard. That's really hard.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of needed skills to succeed in an interview. You got to be able to think on your feet. You got to be able to articulate your ideas. What else? Do you have any suggestions for folks?
Well, there are a lot of different types of interviews. The whole game has changed quite a bit. So it can start from even a phone screening, which some people think is just an informal scheduling call, but that could also be a part of the interview. And so just letting people know that they need to be aware of that piece.
Sure.
You could be prepared just going in to talk to the hiring manager, but you might go into a full panel. And so you might have several people that are present in the interview. Sometimes they might do team interviews where you and several other candidates will be interviewing and competing at the same time. And then they also now have the virtual interviews, which can be done on Skype. And that's just a whole nother ball game where you might be sitting in your kitchen, but you don't necessarily want to have dirty dishes in the background. So there's a lot of things to keep in mind.
Yeah. Boy, this is just such a great opportunity for a job seeker right now. And then you pair that with all the other resources we have here at the library to help you get the job. We've got live resume help. What else do we have?
On tutor.com.
Yeah.
We have a web page called the Career Planning and Jobs page, where we have gathered information from a variety of sources, information that's in our library, that's online, that's in our community, kind of a one-stop shop for people who are looking for resources to help them with each step of the job search process.
And the job search itself, I mean, you think that because you have the internet that you have all the information right there at your fingertips, but that's not necessarily so. We have a lot of resources to help you do job searches.
Yes, like our Learning Express library has a job search component on it, Job and Career Accelerator. There's also a recently added module that's part of our Reference USA database for job seekers.
So lots and lots of resources.
Lots and lots. And we always recommend that the job seeker do research on the employer that they are applying to and hopefully interviewing with. And so we have resources like Reference USA that enable job seekers to get important information about organizations that they're going to interview with so that they can come prepared to ask relevant questions during the interview, not just to be on the receiving end of the questions, but also to have questions, to come prepared with questions of their own.
Yeah. So folks that are coming to So You Think You Can Interview, they've already, well, hopefully they've already written their resume and they're ready for the interview process, or at least they think they are.
And we want to encourage them to be sure and dress for an interview so they get the full experience, and then also bring a resume so that the person who's interviewing them can refer to that resume in asking them questions.
Well, great. Anything else you want to add about this event?
For participants that register, we will send them out a packet that will have some of the sample questions that we'll be asking to allow them an opportunity to prepare. So please make sure you register enough in advance so we can get that material out to you.
Excellent.
And the one-on-one sessions are limited, so we want to encourage those who are interested in a one-on-one mock interview to indicate that in the notes section when they go online to register or when they call 913-826-4600 to register through our telephone reference.
Right. And there's a continental breakfast,
Yes.
right, at 9:30? Okay. Well, that's a little enticement. So this sounds like a great event. And if this sounds like this is for you, we really hope to see you there.
Hey, spread the word. Help us let students of every age and every grade know that they can get help with their homework. In person or online, Homework Help provides students with homework coaches and tutors. Get more information at jocolibrary.org/homeworkhelp.
Welcome back to the Did You Hear podcast. We are ready for our favorite segment, We Recommend. And who better to recommend library materials than librarians? Let's introduce the folks around the table. To my right.
I am Melissa Horak-Hearn. I'm a civic engagement librarian.
And to my left.
My name is Gregg Windsor. I'm a reference librarian whose specialty is reader's advisory.
Run like the wind. Go for it.
Greg,
Yes.
the weather outside is frightful.
It is.
It really is. But spring is on the horizon, isn't it?
I would hope so.
Give us some hope, man.
Well, the part of the fun of doing what I do at the library is that publishers give me access to books that will be coming out in the future. Their goal is to kind of have me read them, and I can tell people about them and get interest going and talk to book clubs and my patrons. And so part of the fun is kind of is seeing what's going to happen not only in the next month, but in the next months coming up ahead. And I have a list of books that I'd like to talk to you about.
So this is like a sneak peek of what we can expect for the
Yes,
next
this is
couple
like
months?
this is like going to a movie and getting a trailer to movies that are going to be coming out months from now,
Only better because we're doing it
and in book version.
in book version.
Absolutely.
All right, folks, get your phones out so that you can start putting holds because here comes Greg's magic list.
Well, let's not go that far, but
oh, it's magic.
Okay, well, we'll see what we can do here. Part of the first book I want to talk to you about is actually a book that's already out, but I'm super excited about it. It's called The Dreamers by Karen Thompson Walker. She wrote a brilliant book called The Age of Miracles that came out several years ago. And this book is kind of I don't want to say a post-apocalyptic, but it's certainly about a very serious event. Throughout history, going back to the Greek and Roman times, there have been reports of like a plague, an illness that would sweep through a community that would leave people falling asleep. So like a sleeping sickness, right? And it would sweep through this community, and then it would just kind of go away after a while. These people would wake up and they would go back to their lives. But so Karen Thompson Walker posits this in a California town, like a small California college town, where one person falls ill and falls asleep, and then another person and another, and it sweeps through this small kind of college and then gets out into the populace. And it sounds like, you would have like military tanks running in and quarantines, but Karen Thompson Walker isn't really interested in that. She's interested in kind of the interior lives of these people who fall asleep and what happens to them. Their brains are more active than normal in the sleeping state. And so she kind of delves into the interior lives of these people in this small town. And her writing is absolutely magical. This is going to be close to a surefire book club bet for 2019 that you're going to get into.
Wow.
Who do you think's going to like that? Like, what other reads might they like?
I think anybody who likes this, anybody who likes kind of the Pulitzer Prize winning, the one librarian, Nancy Pearl, qualifies 4 different types of appeal factors. There's setting, people who love a certain setting, people who like a certain plot, how fast the plot moves, what happens, what's going on. Characters, we get attached to a certain character and want to travel with them. And the last appeal factor is language. It is the way that an author writes and the way you are drawn into the story. And The Dreamers is an excellent example of language being the main appeal factor. The way she writes, the way she gets you into these characters' heads is truly transporting and will absolutely take you away.
That sounds absolutely fascinating. And that one's already out, right?
Yes, it is.
So our listeners can put holds on it right now?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. What else you got for us?
Sure. This is a book that is not out yet. This is called Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book is probably going to hit not just because Reese Witherspoon has already bought the rights to it and is going to do whatever Reese Witherspoon does with the books that she did. So TV, movies, Netflix, who knows? But this is a book that is kind of set in the 1970s in Los Angeles, kind of the height of that album rock's era. And the book is centered around a character named Daisy Jones, who kind of rides the wave of kind of a Fleetwood Mac style band that kind of comes together, dominates the world, and then falls apart within a short period of time. So they blaze fast and leave this massive music legacy. And the genius of this book is that it is told in oral history style. So it's not just a simple narrative that flows through, but the author, quote unquote, interviews different characters who then kind of weave in and out of the story. So the character is like interviewing the Daisy herself, or her parents, or her bandmates, or people who hangers on in the scene. Not only is it written in a unique and engaging way, kind of like those oral histories of like Saturday Night Live or something like that you might read into a magazine article, but Taylor Jenkins Reid has a wonderful sense of setting. So you get that sun-drenched Southern California 1970s Fleetwood Mac imagery and style that really comes to the fore. And I really think that she just does a magnificent job of painting that picture of that setting, of that Southern California style that drags you in. And plus, if you know anything about Fleetwood Mac, you know that there's serious high drama in the band.
Right.
And obviously, in Daisy Jones and the Six, drama will happen. The band does fall apart, and the pieces are picked up later on. And Taylor Jenkins Reid really takes us through that journey.
Such a cool way to put the book together, too. That doesn't happen very often. The only other sort of mock oral history that I can think of right off the bat is World War Z.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I know that technique made that book so much more effective than it would have been if it was just this zombie war just happened.
Absolutely.
That sounds like something that our listeners are going to
I will say that Daisy Jones and the Six does not have any zombies in it, sorry to say.
Well, not everything can.
But everything should, really.
I don't know about that. What about the next book on your list? Does it have zombies?
Actually, no, possibly. Well, let's wait on that for just a second. This book is called The Whisper Man by Alex North. That
sounds like a zombie, right?
It sounds like a zombie movie, right? No, this has already been released in the UK, and it's already been quite the word of mouth hit. Now it's coming over to American shores. Cool. This book is it reminds me a lot of Stephen King's The Shining, but just without a haunted hotel. It is a book about a widowed man and his young son going through some financial difficulties. They have shattered by the death of the wife and mother, so they move to a new community, a small town in England. What happens in this small town several years ago was this spate of serial killings where young boys were targeted by this mysterious figure called the Whisper Man, who would draw their victims forward by whispering outside their window and kind of grooming them and getting into their lives, right? So this Whisper Man character was caught by one of the other characters as the policeman, but years later, this new young man with this new young family who moved into this community starts hearing whispers outside his window. And so the detective who thought the case was long and buried, but is still haunted by it, is brought back out of retirement and has to work and solve this crime. It is kind of part psychological fiction, because you get into the interior lives of these characters who are kind of torn apart by these events, and a little bit of horror, because you don't know whether or not this Whisper Man is supernatural in nature. So you get a great crossover there between your normal serial killer stuff and your horror fans as well.
Gregg, that sounds very frightening.
Are we going to whisper the rest of this podcast?
I'm already too scared of this podcast.
It's the opposite of a beach read.
This is the opposite of the beach read, but
It really is.
one of the things that, in this world, we are, if you go to the multiplex, every weekend there's another horror movie out. If you go on TV, there's Stranger Things and all
We
these
like
other
to be scared.
Right, and so we do like to be scared, but for whatever reason, horror novels still carry that stigma of not really being kind of front and center, just like some other genres like romance or thrillers or mysteries are. And so if you're looking for a way to get into the horror genre by somebody who's not named Stephen King, this book is going to be a great way in.
Nice.
Sounds awesome.
It does.
Yeah.
That sounds fascinating. It's like the British invasion of horror novels.
Absolutely.
What you got next for us?
Okay, next up is going to be I'm switching from horror to kind of more of a kind of an epic, sweeping historical fiction vibe. This next book is called The 7 or 8 Deaths of Stella Fortuna by Juliet Grimes. This is a debut novel, and it takes place in kind of rural Italy, pre-World War I, where the main character, Stella Fortuna, is born in this very rural village, Hardscrabble, and the novel takes her as she goes through her journey from small-town Italy to the American experience. The book actually opens up in modern day as the main character is an old woman and her sister, who's an equally old woman. You know, Melissa, how some families have arguments and disagreements that are so deep, even the people involved don't even remember what it was all about?
I resemble that remark.
All of this too, right? But this book is kind of about that, and so these two sisters who have this long buried animosity, we get taken back and seeing how that comes through by Stella Fortuna, who's a wonderful character. She is very smart and she's beautiful and she's intelligent, but being a smart and beautiful and intelligent woman in 1910s rural Italy is a tough situation to be into. And as the novel progresses, she actually comes close to dying 7 or 8 times. And so each of these deaths or near deaths are part of her life story as she journeys from there to here. And if you have any large, sprawling families that maybe get together and trade stories on the weekend, when the tables are cleared of food and the kids are playing in the backyard, and maybe grandma or grandpa has a couple of sips of wine too much, you get real stories, right, that start really coming out about what happened. This is that type of story, and this is that type of vibe.
That sounds fascinating. It's a time, place, and idea that we don't hear very often.
Yes, this is going to be a really good hit for your book club picks.
Very nice. Do you have any other real hits for us?
I got one more for you. We're moving away from we took you from historical fiction, horror, and now we're going to go thriller. This next book is called The Paris Diversion by Chris Pavone. Now, this takes place in, oddly enough, Paris.
I never would have thought.
I know, right? Super twist. But the main character is kind of a CIA agent. She is a wife and a mother, and she was featured in another book called The Expats, where she was introduced, but you don't have to read that book to get with this one. But she is kind of a field agent. She's administrative in purpose, and she stumbles across a hostage situation that happens on the lawn of the Louvre, and it captures worldwide attention. Everyone's riveted, but Kate, the main character, realizes that the situation is a setup. It is a diversion for something else that is happening across town. So the terrorists or the people behind it are kind of creating their own diversion, and while the right hand is doing one thing, the left hand is doing something quite different. So Kate has to use her intelligence and her expertise to unthread all of these different things that are going on, to piece together the real threat and to deal with that while everyone else is concentrating on one threat. It's Chris Pavone is, as a skillful writer, it's not just dudes with guns and James Bond bang bang thriller stuff. He's really smart in how he builds his characters and how he introduces his characters who have normal desires and frustrations that go with the job. Any person has a job. So not only does Kate have to track down these terrorists, she also has to buy a gift for her son's birthday party in the next day. She has to deal with a husband who kind of is not always present in her life, and she has to pick up the slack for. So there's a lot of other things going on in Kate's world other than just this terror attack, and it really gives it a sense of grounding.
That sounds amazing, those different layers that are in it and the different...
Right.
That
Yeah.
one's going on my list.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
your list has been pretty amazing. And I'm wondering if this will be a regular thing. Are you planning to do this like monthly, yearly? What's the
Well,
deal?
oddly enough, you say that because I publish a kind of a new release kind of blog post on our website. If you go to jocolibrary.org and go to the staff picks section, usually once a month I will spotlight 5 books that are coming out, and I do a brief introduction of who they are and what they talk about. So if you're looking for something good to read and that are not kind of your normal bestsellers, because if you normally when you hear about a book, it's already checked out or there's a hold list. These are books that are maybe under the radar picks that you may not normally have heard about, but that have the stamp of approval that are on them and that you might enjoy.
Impress your friends with your book knowledge. Thanks
Absolutely,
to Gregg.
we will make you into a book ninja.
And that's really what We Recommend is all about.
For more episodes of Did You Hear, go to the Johnson County Library website, jocolibrary.org/didyouhear.